Today, I am joined by Rick and Amy for us to talk about getting ready for fall semester. So we'll give it just a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and start with the housekeeping so that we all know how to participate in today's session. And then we'll go ahead and hand it over to Amy and Rick so they can introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their backgrounds, both at Mongoose and before Mongoose. And then we'll get right to the questions. So housekeeping, please take a look at your Zoom panel. You have a Q&A section that you can submit your questions or comments to. We do have the chat off because we've been having a couple of these chats, these compliance chats, these Ask Me Anything sessions recently, where we've found that it's easier to make sure we answer all the questions, make sure we follow up with you if we don't get a chance to answer live, if we have it just coming through the Q&A. So that's why you can participate via that panel. Otherwise, we'll follow up with a recording for you after this session, and then we will also hint at what is coming with next week's Ask Me Anything session, since we're going to change it around and have a different topic for next week and different guests as well. So we'll do a little teaser at the end of the session about that. All right, so it looks like we've got most of our people in from the queue. So we'll go ahead and kick off. Amy, do you want to introduce yourself? Talk about how you got started here at Mongoose and anything else in your background that you want to share.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. Great to be here. My name is Amy Kilpatrick. I am head of product here at Mongoose. I am coming up on my 4-year anniversary here at Mongoose, and I started my journey here really kind of focused on our web chat offerings. So some of you may remember our first web chat offering, which was under the name of Harmony. And I focused on bringing that to our clients for a few years before we brought our web chat offering under the Cadence umbrella and developed Cadence Chat. And so we have been really kind of bringing this engagement platform to our clients here and focusing on developing it and meeting all of the needs of our higher ed personnel. Before I was here at Mongoose, I was very much in the web realm on the professional services side. So website optimization and digital strategy. So happy to be continuing to bring that expertise to our higher ed clients.
Thanks, Amy. We'll hit more on that chat component, the product vision, where we've been, where we're going a little bit later, because I do see some questions coming in around that already. But Rick, let's go ahead and talk about you and your experience, where you came from, how you got here, why here. So please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you, Amy. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. For those of you, depending on where you are in the world, thanks for joining us. So quick little background. So I oversee sales here at Mongoose, but prior to my stint in ed tech, which has been at several companies now at this point, so I'm excited to hear some questions depending on the lens that you're coming at from. I was on campus for 18 years in a variety of different capacities. So I certainly understand from the undergraduate, the graduate, the business, the medical world, online learning, which I know we've got a couple of folks there from there. Basically all facets of what campus life looks like from the other side. And so I'm really excited to hear some questions and maybe address some of the concerns or topics that you want to cover from both the campus side of things as well as from the ed-tech side of things. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me, Laura.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for joining me. All right. So let's get started with okay, we already have things coming in based on what you said, Rick. So Rick, you mentioned that you spent time on campus yourself, and now we are talking about getting ready for the fall semester during this session. Can you share more about that, what you did on campus, and then also what you were spending your time doing at this point in the year?
Yeah. So, we're here August 2nd, right? So of course, everybody on campus is, certainly in my time at least, going into a little bit of a panic mode because it's all hands on deck, starting to get ready for, students coming back onto campus, and for those that are also, virtual classrooms, right? So there's a little bit of a different time frame now because activity revolves around preparing students, looking at housing, parking, course of curriculum, you name it, everybody's got to be focused on making sure that the students are prepared as they come in for the fall semester. So there's a little bit of a scramble. Sometimes that can cause some friction. Sometimes that means that there's communication gaps. So everybody right now is putting in a ton of hours. They're committed to making sure their students are feeling good and ready for the fall semester. And they want to make sure that they hit goals. So that might be enrollment, right? You don't know until they show up on campus. That might be, housing. You want to make sure that everything is filled. That might be financial aid. You've got to get them packaged. It's different for medical students. It's different for law students. It's different for undergraduate students. So I think that in terms of where folks are right now mentally, it's definitely a little bit of a scramble. And so, if we're able to answer any questions for folks, happy to do so.
Great, thank you. And then you mentioned ed tech, Rick, and that you've had experience at a couple of different ed tech companies. I knew that because I worked with you at another ed tech company. Surprise! But I'm wondering about one of the questions that's coming in is about assessing your ed tech partners, assessing alternatives to ed tech solutions that are already live on campus. Do you have any suggestions based on your experience with that, or what you're hearing and the conversations you're having with current clients and with prospective clients?
Yeah, well, and of course, former colleagues as well, right? So it's they're kind of mentally in this weird space where you're sort of shifting gears from that COVID era, right? So everybody was signing on for every technology tool that they possibly had to have to be able to continue managing business from a virtual setting. In the last year and a half, right, a lot of campuses have been sort of reintroducing staff and students and admins and faculty into this sort of hybrid world, possibly fully on campus world. And so they're starting to look at their technology and asking the questions, right? So we went from a need and necessity to now maybe a little bit of selectivity. What makes the most sense for us? What do we need? What's essential for our business and essential for our students and our mission on campus? And I think that, I was maybe unfortunate, fortunate, depending on how you want to look at it. But there was a period of time there where the Zika virus, when I was overseeing the medical school at the University of Miami, basically was kind of the COVID of its era. We had to shut down and we couldn't physically have students come in. And we started looking at tools that really helped us stay in communication with students, continue the business part of like the academic side of it, right? So for those that are online learning, that would mean, Blackboard, that would mean Canvas, how do you deploy, your course material virtually? So through that exercise, I think that mentally I was well prepared for when COVID had hit. Some of my colleagues were not, right? And so on campus now it's about, well, what do we have to hold on to? Where do we have a limited budget and we want to invest and secure that budget to continue that relationship with the student? That typically is going to be communication. It's going to be program delivery. It's going to be, necessity in terms of making sure that the students feel inclusive on campus. Those are the technologies that are really going to start narrowing down versus what 2 years ago we saw, which was, hey, I just got to figure out how to do this from a computer, right? So very different mindset. And I think that budgets and starting to be very selective about what you're using for your technology is really what a lot of folks are going to be challenged with the next year.
That makes sense. Okay, so this question had a winky emoji with it, so I think they may be being a little sarcastic, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there such a thing as future proofing in higher ed, Rick? Can you future proof from campus? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID demonstrated, right, that you don't have a crystal ball. So all the preparation in the world can never fully prepare you for something like a Zika, like a COVID, those sorts of things. Or, like many of us have talked about the enrollment drop, right? How do you prepare for that? So those sort of trends, you try to make sure that you adjust. I think that in terms of future proofing, I might challenge that a little bit and say, where do you want to invest for growth that is not going to reverse, right? So if you're thinking about online learning, for example, that's an essential part of the business, right? You can't necessarily rely solely on your local population for students to come onto campus. So in terms of future proofing, it's more about where do you want to make sure that you've got guaranteed enrollment and continued growth. The online space is an obvious selection. And so now what's your tool set specifically to communicate with that population or to serve that population? That's probably a more critical element now than it had been in the past. There was a little bit of a negative association with online programs and online learning. I think all that stigma is completely gone. And now it's all about, hey, it guarantees us revenue and growth potential. So that's what I would say in terms of future proofing around enrollment and the mission. You can't always prepare for everything. I mean, University of Miami, there's hurricanes, right? California, there's earthquakes. it's just, it's life, it happens.
Makes sense. Okay, on that topic, talking about the future today, AI, of course, we got to talk about that. So I'm wondering, Amy, can you highlight some of the ways that Mongoose is tapping the power of the future of technology, of AI, to help institutions with what they're facing today and into tomorrow as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we start to talk about AI and start to kind of bring in all of these words, I have to kind of back up a little bit and do some translation for myself and for others as well. But I think automation and making use of smart ways for all of us to work better with the limited resources that we have is something that has always been really, really critical to Mongoose. And knowing the limited resources that higher ed has, especially, and that pinch is continuing to get tougher and tougher as budgets and staff continue to be a challenge. It's always been something that's been critical. Now we have these amazing tools that are coming out that are providing new opportunities to make better use of our resources. And so when we talk about AI, what a lot of people are talking about right now is open AI tools that they're being able to access through Chat GPT. And it's amazing now that we have access to these types of tools and the ability to develop off of them. And certainly for companies like us and other software companies around the world, it's an amazing opportunity. So, it really comes back to we exist as a company and as a product to solve problems and create wonderful solutions for our higher ed clients. So how can we utilize these tools to make life easier, to amplify the impact of our higher ed staff, to improve the service that they are able to offer to their students and families and alumni. So some of the things that we are looking at is, looking at ways to use these open AI tools to look at the sentiment of conversations that folks are having with their students. How do we understand how these conversations are going? And can we look at ways to improve them by understanding a little bit better, how students are taking the things that we're saying and how we're communicating with them? We're also understanding a little bit better through the use of these tools what topics are most important to students and families, and how can we lean into those in our communications. The ability to analyze such a large data set of conversations is really amazing in the space that we're in. And again, this idea of kind of amplifying the impact that we can have with the limited staff that we have. How can we generate content using these amazing tools? So we have several proof of concepts in place. One amazing and challenging thing about this time with these open AI tools is they are new to the market. So getting to use them and play around with them and figure out how best to work with them is an exciting time, but certainly takes some due diligence. So it is a wonderful and exciting time here at Mongoose. We're looking forward to bringing some of these tools to our clients in a responsible way that really solves problems and provides great solutions for our clients.
Great. Thanks, Amy. And I'm realizing I did not introduce myself because I've been hosting so many of these sessions when we kicked off. And so I was just thinking, as you're talking and as Rick is talking about the work that we're doing in the marketing world and in the content marketing really, and with like our podcast for your institution, where we're talking about topics that are really relevant to higher education and to helping to future proof and helping to tap that power of AI and technology as well. And what really strikes me is this idea of scaling empathy. And I feel like, Amy, a lot of what you're talking about with sentiment analysis and with the different discovery, the different alignment with the market problems that's going on in our product lab, as I like to call it, is really aligned with this idea of making it so that our higher education partners are able to scale that empathetic, student-centered approach that led them to work in higher education institutions in general. So I just love to hear it from the other angles and think like, oh yeah, she's talking about empathy, but from the product perspective, and Rick is talking about it from the business development perspective. So thanks for sharing that. Of course, Amy, we've got some questions about what features, functions, services, innovations are coming. Anything you want to highlight? I know we've got a lot coming over the next couple of months, but I thought I'd give you a chance to talk about anything specific.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think when I think about exactly what you're talking about, Laura, why does Mongoose exist? Why does our product exist? And what are our people focused on? We are focused on higher ed. We're focused on helping higher ed change lives and help students find more opportunities. And we really believe that the best way to do that is through connection. So our product exists to increase the quality of those connections. And so you heard me use that phrase, amplifying impact. That is a core tenet of our product strategy. It's, again, finding ways through our product and services to help our clients do more with less. Whether that's through their people or through their tools. So that is something that we build our product strategy around everything we do. How do we help our clients do more with less? Another piece of that is around data-driven decision-making. So there is only so much time in the day. There's only so much resources. We understand that higher ed needs to understand how the things they are doing are working and how they can improve them. They need to be accountable and transparent about the work that they're doing so that they can make good decisions. And so we are looking to provide more data and metrics around the work that our product is doing and bring that together with other data so that they can use that in their strategic planning. And the other big piece of our product strategy is breaking down silos. It is all about the student experience. And they want and need and they want this cohesive experience with an institution from the moment they first engage with your institution all the way through to being an alumnus and hopefully a donor. So how do we help as a partner of higher ed bring departments together, bring folks together, bring the experience together for both sides of the house. So everything that we do from a product perspective is centered around those three themes. Kind of looking at the types of things that are ahead for us, I gave you a little sneak peek on what we're thinking about in terms of AI, but bringing together more integrations to work with other software systems on campus, looking at how different departments work together to plan messaging to make sure that things are cohesive. We have tools for folks being able to hand off conversations between different departments, all of that, again, benchmarking, bringing all of those themes together. So hopefully that helps with a little bit of detail there.
We've got some excitement. So we have current clients, a couple who are here on the Ask Me Anything today. Welcome. And we also have a couple who are not necessarily working with Mongoose yet, but maybe considering it. So thank you all for joining us. And thank you for the excitement around what Amy is talking about. It sounds like it's really having an impact for those who are already working with Mongoose based on the excitement I'm seeing in the Q&A panel. On that note, Rick, we do have some questions about suggestions, best practices, tips, what we're hearing when it comes to the people who we're working with to help foster engagement, help boost those connections like Amy was just talking about. And I know that you talk to a lot of current clients, you talk to a lot of prospective clients from lots of different institution types. Are there any best practices or tips that you can share for today's audience based on what you're hearing?
Yeah, well, and I think that Amy had touched on quite a few of those, so maybe I might elaborate a little bit further on it. I mean, I think that what we generally get in terms of feedback, I mean, and for folks that may not know, we're pushing beyond 950 different, institutions and partners that we work with. So we get a pretty good lens on what's happening in terms of, on-campus life and some of the challenges. I think that in terms of Amy, you talked about breaking down like silos, right? So maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. One of the challenges that I think for any office on campus is collaboration, right, across the institution, and it's not always coordinated, right? So we want to understand, from our clients, how do we make that process a lot easier for everybody? There's advantages to having that cohesive messaging across from the student experience, right? It can seem very disjointed. Oftentimes we're not thinking about it from their perspective, right? So on-campus admissions office is looking at it differently than financial aid, right? They're in their lane, they're focused on their particular task. But from the student perspective, it has to look seamless. It has to feel, natural, right? So in terms of best practices, I think that, for those that are current clients, I would encourage you to consider reaching out to your partners, on other sides of campus, other departments. We can fold in nicely across, the Mongoose platform. Cadence can touch everything from admissions teams all the way through alumni and advancement and everything in between. And that makes it for a cohesive experience for a student, right? Which, ultimately, that's what they want. They want a positive, if they're investing tuition dollars, or if they're on scholarship, or they're a student athlete, or, what have you, you need to deliver a very positive experience. And everybody on campus strives for that. So in order to do that, there needs to be that cohesive messaging across all of the departments. Now, so we've got the ability to do that. For folks that may be exploring ways to connect with students, I mean, this can be a generational gap. So the other part of this, I think, in terms of best practices, is realizing that your student population is getting younger and younger and younger. And if you do not stay in lockstep with how they communicate, you're going to lose them. And I'll quickly share a little story around that. Law school, I had law students, right? You've got law professors, you've got folks that are teaching, law students that are coming in from 1Ls, and their mindset is, I'm sending you an email. You're reading that email. You're going to show up. You're going to be prepared based on the information that I sent out, the night before. Well, guess what? Most of that, group, that population, they never check their inbox. They're not reading that information, but they are reading text messages. And it's always been a struggle to ensure that there is that communication with the student. So I would encourage folks to think not only in terms of evolution, but also in terms of how do you best gain that consistency and experience for the student, right? Don't just push out an email that says, show up to this class or complete that exam or that report is due or what have you. You need to think of a different way to get in contact with them. And you're also looking at, if you're a campus that you've got professional, non-traditional students, they're also, in a full-time role. They're focused on their jobs. They're not going to be looking at their student email account, but they are going to be looking at their phone. So I would say in terms of best practices, being aware and thinking in terms of how do you best communicate with that particular population segment is critical. Does that help answer that question, Laura?
Oh, yes, of course. Amy, did you want to add anything? I feel like that was a pretty good comprehensive answer. And I love the examples, Rick, from your former life that we get you to tap into regularly. Amy, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think maybe I hit on it a little bit before earlier, but yeah, I just think, again, as Rick said, this again is all about the students and what they expect and what they need in order to be successful. And we have to kind of put ourselves in that mindset and bring ourselves together in order to meet their needs, which are constantly changing. Which is challenging, but we can do it, and that's something that Mongoose is definitely here to help with.
Great. Okay, so I wanted to give time so that I can queue up next week's Ask Me Anything, since we're doing these every week in August, and I want everybody to get excited about next week, same time, same place. But I did have one last question that came in that I want to make sure we answer. So thank you to the direct communicators here on the Ask Me Anything today. The question is, why should I text with Mongoose? And so my reading of that question is that this person is considering texting and trying to reach their students in the way that we're talking about, and maybe looking for why would people consider doing that with Mongoose, and why would they see Mongoose as a great texting partner? I feel like I know that part of the answer to this, but I will queue up Rick to get started, and then Amy, I'll tap you for last thoughts too.
I mean, I think we've hit on it. I mean, we are solely focused on higher education. We're K through 12 to some degree, right? And there'd be a little bit left or so there, but we're really looking at the student and serving that population. So I would say, to answer the question, right? What's the difference in terms of texting with Mongoose? And by the way, text or chat, you should really consider both depending on how you're engaging with students. Because remember, texting means you have to be at your desk, right? Or on your phone during business hours. Chat can do it all hours. So don't forget that part of it. But essentially, there's lots of options out there, but just like anything, you want to pick a partner that, in the word partner, right? You want to pick somebody that understands the space, works with that student population, gets lots of feedback from, again, lots of higher ed partners, getting, really into the weeds to some degree about what the needs and the necessities are. I think that Mongoose is obsessively focused on ensuring that the client, right? So the campus or the department or the user, whomever, has the best possible experience and is delivering the best possible experience to their student population. You can buy any tool set, you can buy any widget, it does a job, it checks a box. The difference there is, are you going to be making an investment in a partnership that continuously evolves and has support there? And I know that there's fantastic people at this organization that are really, really focused, because many have come from campus life, focused on making sure that not only are they servicing, the client appropriately, but delivering above and beyond what we commit to and what we promise to. Probably to our own detriment, quite honestly, right? And Amy, I'm going to default to you on that, right? Lots of hours from the product team and support team on supporting those asks. So I would say pick and choose based on who do you want to have as a partner, not just a widget or a tool set.
All right, thanks, Rick. And I think that the answer from your perspective is really helpful too, because you have worked with a lot of different ed tech partners and ed tech vendors, to say that word, but from both perspectives. And so that's really helpful. Amy, do you want to wrap us up, and then I will give the cue for next week, and then we'll be up with that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I don't think it's surprising for folks to think of Mongoose first and foremost as a texting provider, because we were the pioneers of the texting platform. And, texting is still an extremely relevant channel for higher ed. That doesn't mean that it's an easy one to master. And the partners that you have here at Mongoose in terms of, the complexities of the compliance aspects of texting, and, the very real risks of burning out the medium if you do not use it carefully. That is a very clear advantage to texting with Cadence and with Mongoose. But engagement as a category is much more than texting, and we need to continue to think about it as a broader category, because it will not always mean texting. And what I love right now about our key channels being text and web chat is the combination of the two. So texting being a very kind of proactive outreach channel, and web being a very reactive. And to your point, Rick, texting being very much like I'm here on my phone, I've got this in my pocket, it's always with me, but I'm doing this thing right now, versus web, which, I'm on the couch, it's after hours, somebody might not be on. It is a perfect balance. It is a complement. people doing different things at different times. And so being in both of those places for your different audiences is really critical and gives you that great coverage of your audiences. Sure, there's going to be more channels that pop up that are critical. We're going to be there for those too. But the combination of the two and our commitment to back that with data and service and best practices and insights is really the difference maker here. So I hope you'll join us.
Thanks, Amy. And thanks for the product perspective too, because now I think we can all just hear that commitment to partnering, that commitment to offering that technology, offering the services, but also making sure that it's something that is evolving and is setting you all up for success. So thank you. We are a minute over the end. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I hope you will consider joining us next week. We will be focusing on the student athlete engagement experience. And so would love to see you there. I'll have Morgan McSweeney, who has 15 plus years of experience with athletic directing, athletic advancement with Division I institutions, and then also a partner from a community college who is specifically focused on advising student athletes, joining me so that we can answer some questions about what engagement looks like for those students and how you can create harmony across work and school and the field and lots of different sports references that Rick will help me work in before that session. So thank you all. Thanks for joining us, and we'll follow up with the recording. Have a great rest of your week.